On your good hands. I'm Wendy. I'll be introducing you, and you're going to be the first speaker. So thank you. Well, we have like we have a presentation.
Wendy? Wendy, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. What is that?
Broken.
It's
The
broken.
light is broken.
Okay.
I didn't expect this. Oh my
Well,
God.
have to make it work. The mic is working, right?
Yeah.
Do we have maybe a phone that we can light it with?
I don't have an extra phone. I'm using it to monitor.
Right.
I
Okay, the mic is
when
on,
I
right?
when I turn on the light.
If you can turn on a light over here, that would be great. Is there a podium light?
Yeah, there is a podium light.
Okay, we'll use the podium light. We're fine. Ah. Carol, is this light good enough that they just put on here? Yeah, I'm all bright. Everybody can see me, right? And I can see all of you, and I can see what's on this paper, so that, yeah, this'll work for you.
Oh, that's perfect.
Okay, good. And I'm going to introduce you. I just wanted to make sure you could see.
Let me take some things away.
Oh,
so
that's
that
fine.
they're not in your way.
Thank you.
And my stitches in here, so.
Perfect. Okay, thank you everybody for being here with us tonight at the Explorers Club. We're really happy to have you. Very special place that you're in. Those of you who came on my tour, I'm sure realize that already. We were the first to the moon, to the Marianas Trench, to the North Pole, to the South Pole. And you all are the first that are going to hear our talk tonight. So we're all really excited about that. I will share with you a little bit about our guests. I'd like to welcome Karen Saylor Ryan. Saylor, is that correct?
No, it's Carol
Seiler, thank you. Okay, Carol Seiler Ryan, yes? Thank you. And Klaus H. Jacob, was that correct? I always think it's important to pronounce people's names correctly. Thank you very much. So, Carol Seiler Ryan is a lifelong artist who recognized art as her calling 6 years ago. I love this story, by the way, after seeing a neighbor, a sign painter, apply gold leaf on the side of a truck. It was a what? Age 6, okay. I'm not responsible for typos, but I love that, but let's talk about this. How extraordinary, okay? Because art as a teaching tool, 6-year-old kids are going to be our future. There you were at 6, and this made such an impression on you, and it was a lifelong impression that you carry forward. She faced discrimination as a young woman in the art and education world, and I personally would like to hear more about that later when you talk, but eventually came to work evenings in the art department of a Madison Avenue ad agency. They started producing projected media, and Carol worked in the business during the inception of what was to become a cutting-edge industry. You see, you were exactly where you were supposed to be at a given time, just like every explorer. One that would allow her to experiment with design in another medium, which is light, which is really, really incredible. We are just coming and learning about how light affects everything. You know, in the animal world, they don't see light the same way we do. So you have exciting things to share with us here tonight. For over 30 years as a freelance designer, Carol was hired by New York City producers to design major multimedia projects. And I know we have a film that we're going to be showing tonight, yes? Absolutely. Okay, and Klaus H. Jacob, PhD, thank you for coming tonight. Geophysicist and a rebuilder. So I like to say we have art and we have science at the same time. And tonight here at the Explorers Club, we're watching art and science come together. He's worked at Columbia University's Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory for over 50 years and is a renowned earthquake, disaster, and climate expert. He has a focus on disaster risk management, which is something we are all hearing about now all the time because what's going on the Earth is happening really quickly. And his most current research is on rising sea levels, climate change, and disaster resilient megacities. I'm very excited, and I want to welcome you both here tonight. Thank you so much. So, Klaus, you're going to be our first speaker. Please come up to the podium. Thank you. If you need anything, let me know.
Sure. Love. Oops. Thank you, Explorer Club and audience, for showing up. I think it's more than a year ago I was here the last time when Bill McKibben gave a talk from 360.org, and obviously that was about climate change too. An image replaces 1,000 words, so I think we should get quickly to the image. I hope I can do it in less than 1,000 words. I drove earlier this month across the GW Bridge. And as I came from New Jersey onto the bridge on the upper deck, I could not see the end of the bridge. I could not see Manhattan. I could not see the Hudson River. I was driving in the sky, in the clouds. Well, clouds? It was smog. This is one form how climate change manifests itself. We have too much rain, we have too little rain, and droughts cause the conditions for wildfires, and the wildfires up in Canada early this year burned woods larger than twice the size of New Jersey. No wonder I was driving in the clouds into Manhattan, in the smog clouds. We have, of course, other things like Irene, Sandy, Floyd, Ida, you name it. Floods from below, meaning coastal storm surges, when combined with sea level rise, will be the biggest challenge that this city and many other coastal cities on the East Coast, on the West Coast, and all around the world will have to face. Why? Because in 2015, I believe it was, when the nations came together to sign the so-called Paris Agreement, which said by 2050 we will be not emitting CO2 in any substantial way. 2050. That's less than 30 years. And when you look where the emissions go as a function of time, they're not going down like the Paris Agreement would request. They're still going up, up, up. The annual rate of emissions goes up. So the discrepancy between what the Paris Agreement tried to achieve, namely the temperature stabilizing not higher at 2 degrees C or 1.5 if possible, and thereby having the sea level rise stabilizing a few hundred years from now, because it takes a while before the CO2 gets out of the atmosphere into the ocean, and we already have so much CO2 front-loaded the atmosphere with that for the next few hundred years, sea level rise will go up, up, up. And the question is, at what elevation will it be stabilizing? The NPCC, the New York City Panel on Climate Change, made forecasts that by the end of this century it would be 72 inches, more than 6 feet. And by 2150, in particular with a rapid ice melt scenario of the Antarctic and Greenland, it could be approaching 10 feet. That would be the end of many, many neighborhoods in this city. Now, we are talking a lot about adaptation to these conditions. So there was a plan after Sandy to build a big U seawalls around Lower Manhattan, disguised as parks. But when you look at the details of their designs, they are breadcrumbs of what we need to do. These are billion-dollar, tens of billions of dollars of breadcrumbs when we have the need for 100 billions, if not trillion dollars fixes in the long run. We are in denial. We are in denial where the climate currently goes if we continue on this earth the way we have been doing since Paris, just the last 7 years. We have not turned around, and that is not a good omen. So no wonder that an artist like Carol has bad dreams that she wants to put into an allegory. An allegory, I understand, is telling the truth with artistic forms, whether it's by legends, fables, or in visual form. That's her way to express her anxiety and denies the denial that we are all suffering from. So what can we do? Sure, the city, the state government, federal governments, they do some things, but it's totally insufficient. So what can you do? Well, you can do first small things. Half your shower time. Make sure that you use your gas using car as little as possible. And many other such things. If you happen to be a house owner, maybe you can do photovoltaic cells on your roof. But I think the most important thing that you can do is vote for those people who think about those issues. Because if only you do something, and the body politics and decision makers are not, we are in deep trouble. I could go on what the city here does or doesn't do. But I'm anxious to see the artist's version of what went through her head and mind and artistic creative choices to put this together. I saw an earlier version a year ago, and when a good friend, Michael Shapiro, who wrote the music, approached me and said, maybe you can come to the Explorer Club and say a few words. I didn't even have to think a second about it. I liked what I saw a year ago. I liked what I saw earlier today, and I'm curious what you will like when you see things in a moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Klaus. Thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me. If you can't, just let me know and I'll try to adjust things. I don't speak as well extemporaneously as Klaus, so I have an actual speech. But I'm very glad to be here and that you have all come. So good evening to all of you. And Klaus was right. I do have bad dreams about what may happen. That's better. Thank you. And there's been a particular fact on my mind very often. And it is one thing. It's that today, 4.4 billion people, that is 56% of the world's population, live in cities. Many of those people were born in cities and will die there or in another city or suburb without ever seeing the night sky. For our ancestors, that was what defined them. They created cultures, built cities and temples, edifices that we are still discovering and trying to understand, to fathom. And they did that to help them to understand where they stood in reference to the vastness of that celestial drama they witnessed daily. How can humans understand their place in the universe if they are so out of touch with nature they have not even experienced the mystery of visible space? How can they then imagine themselves on a small blue orb, perfect to support life, and grasp its value and the responsibility we all have to support it? Climate change is the most pressing and relevant issue of our age, with repercussions that affect not just us and our children, but all of humanity. And so my video begins there, the night sky, with our planet and the infinite wonder it presents as it moves through space. This is the source of our wonder, our thoughts and questions. During my design career, to the extent that the visuals evoked feelings, my job was to open the minds of the audience to receive what came next. Always the corporate logo. Corporations, political parties, powerful families, and churches, any group trying to capture attention and promote the attachment of large numbers of people have always made use of the power of art and imagery to break down resistance to the message. As an artist, I was more interested in the visual experimentation these projects allowed me. It was the way the light would transition during the dissolves as one color would meld into another that was most intriguing. The audience would entirely miss it. It would take no time at all for it to happen. It would go by so fast they wouldn't even see it. But in the video, I indulged that interest. And take the time to watch the colors blend as one visualization goes into another. You'll see it particularly when you see the sun rising, and particularly at the end, where I just give it the time for you to see it happen. This, to me, is a foray into abstraction. It's pure focus on the changing light. When discussing climate issues with some people, there seems to be a feeling of powerlessness and complacency. And my own niece, who is a brilliant woman, told me she knows global warming is a problem, but she still needs to vacuum, get her daughter to school, and tend to her small business, all before shopping and making dinner. She was making the point that the problem is so huge, it has nothing to do with her everyday life. And it's easy to understand how people tend to back burner the things they find unpleasant. We in this country have grown up with endless forms of fantasy to distract us. For my generation, it was Disney. And Disney was powerful art. Girls focused on princesses, pretty dresses, and always happy endings provided by someone else. I recently learned that 7 out of the 10 movies expected to be the top grossing films this year are aimed at young audiences, feature protagonists with unnatural superpowers. Is this a panacea for powerlessness? The fact is that art can lead people to either engage problems or ignore them. And so recognizing the desire for art to soothe in my video, we spend some time in a cartoon Eden, under the benevolent care of an archetypical figure that has been emblematic for fecundity and plenty since the Stone Age. This is a place we would all like to stay for a while, but in life, without effort, impossible to maintain. In the spirit of hope, I, as others, look to explorers, and especially to scientists who have seen with their own eyes dying ocean reefs and melting permafrost, to give the rest of us the benefit of their experience. Exhilarate in achievements, but also warn of problems so that we may, as a body, avoid pitfalls. But how to reach those who refuse to look directly at the problem? Even when faced with days of smog-producing wildfires and the current failure of water sources that in the past have always sustained us. I do worry. I worry. We need to reach people in a way that is painless, because it speaks to people on levels that are largely unconscious. And that way is art. Mindfulness, the ability to create without self-censure, allows images to pour forth from a place that is primitively human, the gut. And reaching people on that level is powerful. Consider also that art takes many forms. Betsy Franco-Fini, a writer and artist who is here in our audience tonight, worked with Lamont scientists to create a children's book. She was horrified by the Exxon Valdez and Deepwater Horizon oil spills and inspired to make illustrations. With Christine Levan, a composer, she created scientifically accurate stories to be viewed on pages of vivid color drawings and acted out as songs. Children's books, you say, may not find a wide audience, but educated youth modify their behaviors throughout their lives. Climate education has shown to be potentially more effective at changing behavior than many other approaches. And that's why it was critical to me that my piece be broad enough that it could be understood by everyone, regardless of language, culture, or age. Art speaks to humanity, not only to an elite, educated group. Gender is a good example. The rainbow flag, a logo, that is, a piece of art, is now instantly recognizable as a symbol of that movement. Where is the symbol that unites people passionately behind climate interests? Juneteenth is now a nationally recognized federal holiday. Why not Earth Day? People attach themselves to those movements because they believe those issues directly affected their lives. They found their power. They learned with all parts of society working together, regardless of class, education, race, or political bias, a consistently vocal, unified movement with votes as weapons would be heard. But as a species, it seems we are held back by DNA that makes us less than stable under duress. I worry that we do not have the capacity to hold back. We fight over resources. As climate changing causes shortages, will our leaders find the maturity not to escalate and respond to the nuclear saber rattling that we are hearing now from Russia? Global warming does not inspire visions of happy endings. In my video, the worst occurs. But it is really my prayer that we can stop in time. The changeover to electric cars is happening more quickly than expected, and that's certainly a plus. But global warming is progressing faster than expected, too. Financial incentives to turn away from the inconvenient truths we've known for decades are always with us. Our obligation is to reach voting adults with the power to elect courageous, aware, and educated leaders who clearly see that our planet is in crisis. Art has the power to persuade without preaching, sometimes even without language, so that new ideas or ideas that may otherwise be glossed over can be brought to light. It is my firm belief that art can be a powerful catalyst to help open minds in a broad, diverse population that must work together to engage this urgent danger to our species. I never meant to create a 15-minute art video dealing with climate change, but once I began, I became a conduit. I chose animation because it combines the enticing fantasy we associate with childhood memories and the ability to show truly horrific scenes with a certain detachment because of the emotional distance provided by illustration. My education, career experience, and the enforced solitude of the pandemic came together with other factors to create a perfect storm that would bring me to make this video. I thank you for the opportunity to show it and share it with you. And if we can have the room as dark as possible, that would be very helpful. you. Thank you. So you may have some questions or some comments.
Say a little bit, Carol, about each frame was an individual painting, wasn't it?
Well, an individual piece of art, it started with a painting. I'm better over here? Okay. It started with a painting. My friend Grace Knowlton had given me a studio on her property, and I was working on a painting that was originally something very similar to the monolithic woman with the body that was earth and all of those lines. I'd had that in my mind for a very long time to do something like that. And suddenly, a couple of things happened. I was in my little studio and the potbelly stove stopped working, and I started getting a leak in the roof. So I moved inside to her studio where she had a computer, and I could be in the corner and work. And I thought, well, it's easier to do lines this way anyway. And that was the way that it started. I didn't mean to do it, but because I had been doing things in sequence so long, I did one frame and then and I pulled in some painting elements, and one thing led to another frame, and I thought, oh, if I do this, then I can make this move here, and then I can make that move there. And after doing that for quite a while, I had a pile of pictures and an idea of what I wanted to do, and then I decided I didn't want to do it alone anymore. And so I went and asked the nerdy duo, that's their company name, I'm not calling them names, Melissa Wieland and Erin Cardulo, to jump in. And Melissa is really the person who is such a good, sensitive person with movement and timings, and we saw the same way, and we worked together over a long period of time. We would get together once a week, and then I would go jump and do a bunch more frames and make changes, and then we would go back and work some more, and that went on for a very long period. I've seen it so many times, I, excuse me, can hardly see it anymore. So, but most people have said it has some impact, and I hope that it gets the ideas across. Yes?
Hi, Carol. I know I asked you this a little bit before.
This is Betsy, by the way, who did the books.
And I was just wondering, again, please tell us why, usually you see something like this, and then you go back to include some of the solutions, so that at least it's a happy ending. You know, this was not a happy ending.
We all want happy endings, and we're used to happy endings. I have only seen one dramatic series produced by a Japanese company about global warming, and it was called Japan Sinks, People of Hope. And they almost annihilated their entire country. Japan is a country that knows about annihilation. And maybe they can get backing for things without happy endings. And they actually, at the very end, pulled it back and saved Mount Fuji, I think, or some. But I've only seen, that's the only thing I've seen, because people always want happy endings. Artists don't give happy endings. If you think about Guernica, you think about that painting. It's, and Goya's Disasters of War. All artists can do is show you what's there and make you feel. We can't give you the happy endings. Scientists can help to give us hope and bring us, you know, some positive ways to go. But we really, I don't think it's for artists to do that. We just have to touch you and make you feel. But I think that you can do that and then go on from that to some positive things. So I see, I can imagine a bunch of places where you can place art where it be seen by people who don't perhaps normally go to museums, or perhaps even really think about climate warming very often, where you could bring some things in. I find that there are one-liners that I hear about climate change that frighten me so badly that I just, I just feel them deeply. And I think that if you do it in small doses, with art as a transition to get in there and then hit somebody with a small thing, and do that repeatedly, you might be able to bring some people in. I mean, there are bigger ways. Art, as I said, has many faces. People are doing pageants. People are doing fairs around the world, art fairs and climate fairs. And I think that art could be integrated into those, and if the museums would take part, because they speak to so many, excuse me, I think there are places where it could be very effective if we all work together. That's me speaking. I'm an artist. I'm not a politician. I'm not a person who can go out there and make these changes. This is what I can do. And so I did it. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I found it very moving on so many levels, but I want to particularly mention the music.
Oh, Michael's composition.
It added so much to the video. It really was wonderful.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you, Mark. This is Michael. Yes, well, you know. My dear friend who worked with me on this, with his own passionate, he's a great composer and he put himself into it. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
So, first of all, this was incredibly beautiful and incredibly tragic. As an artist, you did that. You showed that. How do we take a piece like this and bridge that gap where we just had, the sun was pivotal in this, the sun was something that you noticed. We weren't able to see the sun just a couple of weeks ago. That completely freaked me out, and I have a background, and a lot of people. And now we're all back to business as usual. That was something that happened, like an oil spill happens. Like, we're aware of the CO2 and what's going on with that, but people are still not aware enough to change their ways. From your perspective as an artist, how do we get a piece like this or an awareness like this out on a larger level?
I think it's about what my speech was about, getting through the complacency and getting people to see that it does have something to do with their lives. The thing about the wildfires that struck me was that we are such a closed system. When I was doing this, people would say, oh, we're not passive, because I was seeing the earth, she has no arms. She's essentially a doll figure she's passive. And they would say, no, the earth isn't passive, but we are passive, because we're passive within a solar system where the sun's energy is affecting us, and then what we're doing here is affecting us. Scientists can probably say this much better than I, and maybe I'm not really accurate because I'm not a physicist. I don't know. But I do think the only way to do it is to get it in front of people, and with people who do have the wherewithal to put a lot of money behind things, to foster enormous fairs, international things that people will take notice of. Me Too, and things like after, that unfortunate gentleman who died because of the knee on his neck, and things like that. People come together when they see it affects them. If they don't know it affects them, we are too busy. We just have too much other stuff to do. I can only do the tiniest bit. I have fantasies about how this might be used. This was done at 8K, and with some work, it could be on a 20-foot screen. And as I say, videos can be shown simultaneously around the world simultaneously, and also streamed to people, so that you can get it anywhere, and with enough advertising. But it has to be consistent, and it has to be down to earth and speaking to people on every possible level. Yes.
find the industrial West and the OECD, you hear many of the members saying, we are responsible for a lot of this, and they've done a great deal thus far. But two key players are India and China. My question for you is how this should be on a universal basis, but still have application within those two cultures as a way of starting the dialogue, to have them be less recalcitrant.
All I can say is that from my point of view, it was why I did not want language to be part of it. Because that way it could be understood by people and it could be streamed. So that anywhere that someone has a computer, they would be able to see it. But it has to be more than, it has to be ubiquitous and everyone working together. It's,
Are there more symbols that might be needed for the other cultures?
more symbols? I don't know, because I'm not Chinese, or, I don't really know well enough. I think what it has to be are a lot of people come together who do know, and can, maybe there was someone here who works for the UN to get involved. But I'm sure that Klaus and his, other scientists have done everything they can to garner attention. All I can do is say I'm an artist, and that I want art to do what it can. I think that unless the message can be understood, it's not going to be helpful. A lot of great art, and believe me, I could do a whole lecture here on why I love abstraction, but I think that it has to be understandable to be helpful at all. And that's what I am offering.
Can I make a short comment?
Please, Klaus.
Sure. China has exceeded the United States in emission some 5 years ago, but simply in part because they have such a large population. If you look at the per capita emission, per person emission, United States is way in front of anybody else. We are using, wasting, whatever, so much energy compared to other nations per person that we have to really think about what that means and how we can, even so we have a much smaller population than India and China, how we can make a global contribution to this.
Thank you.
I agree that it's easy for us to say the other guy, China, India, whatever. We all care. Everyone in this room is here because we care. How many of us have Ziploc bags in our kitchen? How many of us use plastic to cover our food? How many of us use the little things that you put in your dryer to make your clothes soft? It's all plastic. It's all contributing to this problem. Every one of us has something in our house that we personally don't think about that is adding to the problem that we can change. Klaus said about the shower, take a shorter shower. Yeah, and we notice that. We can notice our showers, but we don't notice the little things that we do absolutely every day that we have been doing and our parents have been doing, and all of it is contributing. We're all contributing. We all can change.
Thank you. Yes.
But we're not going to change unless there's an emotional impact. And what this does is it's an emotional impact. What's happening out west with the fact that the Colorado River is disappearing is affecting people in ways that nothing else has. And they're beginning to think about things in a very different way. And I think the smoke that we had here, it was not just, oh, it's out there in California, the Californians deserve everything. It was suddenly, how could that be here? How could that be everywhere? And unless there's an emotional because I remember the effect of the flying monkeys in The Wizard of Oz when I was a little kid, and Fantasia. But I remember so much of Fantasia, the rest of it that was so powerful and so good, just needs to find a source that will get it out.
Thank you. The smog was, we're a closed system. It's we're a small planet, and we don't realize how small until something like that comes along. Yes?
So, let's talk about things like distribution, because this is really a brilliant piece, and Sue, you have a background as an educator, and I agree with you. Where do you take this? You know, you're preaching to the converted here,
I
right?
know.
We're on the same, no, and this is great. Well, how wonderful that we got to see this. What's the next step with this? I mean, how do you market a piece like this? Because the timing was everything. If this could have been shown around the time when all of a sudden, all you could see was a big orange thing in the sky obscured by black only a few weeks ago. And you're right, then it was hitting close to home. So how do you get a piece like this out there?
Well, I'm not a marketing person. I can only show it and hope that someone who is will pick up on it and help me to get it out there. I will, put it out wherever it's seen. I agree with you about the young children, but I think that I don't think that young children can't be shown bad things as long as they have parents' hands to hold or someone who will explain it to them and say, this doesn't have to happen, and this is what we're fighting for, we're looking forward to doing better. Things like that. But yes, Melissa.
I will tell
Melissa's
you
the animator, by the way.
Yes.
Yes.
I will tell you guys that kids over 8 can absolutely handle this. Erin and I are teaching artists in Pelham, New York, and we have filmmaking and animation students who have seen pieces of this as examples of how you can move, a still object, and just for the technical, see little tiny bits of the horrors at the end to explain a couple of techniques we use. They can handle it. They're more worried about climate change than we are. They're mad at us. I am 39. They're mad at my generation because we haven't done enough. Kids over 8 can handle this. They're yelling at us louder than we're yelling at.
Yay. Yes, one of the younger generation, please.
Really young compared to everyone here, but
That's good.
so I was kind of like off the emotional thing. I feel like when everything was when the sky became orange, my entire school was acting like it was a zombie apocalypse. They were handing out masks, and I was and it was kind of a lot of them buy fast fashion that then ends up in dumps, and because I don't know, my mom told me about this, but there's a big fast fashion dump in the desert in Chile, where because it costs less for fast fashion companies to dump extra clothing that haven't sold, because all the clothing is on trend. You only want to buy it when everyone else is wearing it. So I feel the way that I feel when it benefits them, when things are cheaper because they're made in ways that affect the environment worse than when it's made with natural materials and not getting plastic stuff, getting stuff that's more expensive but better for the environment. When it's cheaper, since we're all in 7th grade, we want the cheaper stuff because we don't have it. Most of us, we don't have jobs. We want, if we're paying for any of our own stuff, we're gonna get cheaper plastic stuff, all the on-trend stuff that's not made well because they know that it's gonna be out of trend in
It's
a month. And they're
planned
gonna sell it.
obsolescence, yes, with many, many things, including clothing.
And I feel
Thank you. Yes.
To your point about the on-trend, there are a couple of companies now that are actually recycling and taking recycling. If we talk about just the cheap, very on-trend thing for young people, H&M will take back your used clothing. They either resell it or take out the fibers and remake it. Take your stuff back to H&M. It doesn't have to be bought there. Patagonia recycles. REI recycles.
Eileen Fisher, yeah.
Fisher recycles. It's getting, in a small way, there is a start to your point, and your point is very, very valid.
It is very valid. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, really.
Thank you, young lady.
Apple and HP that, we don't accept e-waste, that if I lost the password to my new MacBook, that's it. It's absolute trash. I cannot save it. Period, the end. It is cryptography. It is locked.
No, that's a really big problem. Everything is planned obsolescence. And everyone knows it, and people invest large amounts of money in this IT stuff, and 5 years later, they say, oh, you can't upgrade this anymore. But one more point that I want to make about this, my greatest fear is about us. It's about the fact that our DNA is such that we are programmed to fight over resources. And I'm going to tell you about something that happened to me and my niece. Myself and my niece. She was a young adult at the time and visiting in Jersey, and I was taking her back to the Newark airport. And I hadn't gotten gas. So I thought, all right, no biggie, I'll get it on the turnpike on my way to the airport. We drove up, and this was evening, it was dark. We drove into the area where we should have gotten gas, and there was no electricity. There was a storm that had knocked out. The grid. And suddenly, I went from being on the highway into being up on top, and what had happened was the people were trying to get out and trying to get gas and whatever they were doing, but it was like gridlock in every direction. Cars, here, there. But it was like Night of the Living Dead. People jumped out of their cars, were banging on each other's windows and screaming with ugly faces. And it was my niece. Now, she was in her 20s. She dropped to the floor under the dashboard and in a fetal position. And I saw a way out. I got between two cars, and I was like an inch from one on each side, and she's screaming at me, Aunt Carol, don't do it, Aunt Carol, don't do it. She was afraid someone was going to attack us. And I got out of there, and that was just because there wasn't any gas. For one short time. Now, I'm sure a lot of those people might have pressing things. I always think to myself, people are on their way to the hospital. They have people who are, but it was insane. If we can't tolerate something that small, how are we going to tolerate it when we have serious shortages? I'm afraid, and I think that we all should be, but I think that we're the devil in the room as much, and also because we're hungry to have everything, we're greedy, but also because we won't give anything up or give anything to anybody else.
Selfish.
So I just put that out there.
Carol, we have, we're broadcasting online as well. This is from Jenny Walkowicki. Do you think that your art talks equally to both sides of the debate? For example, the science that is raising the red flag and the deniers of climate change everywhere.
I just think that it makes a statement, and people will see it through the lens of their own thoughts and their own beliefs, and I can't really weigh that. But I hope that it would certainly speak to whoever sees it on whatever level they feel it's valid for them, and I hope that they see it also just as a piece of art. Because when I started it, all I was thinking about was having a moving painting that would be in a frame, and it just got away from me.
We have time for one last question. I'd like to put out to the room. Anybody? Yes, please. Yes.
Climate change. I'm a mom, I'm an artist as well, my daughter. I had this idea, I mean, it's not my idea, but if we would all, if the world would over, we would put out the question, if we could save the planet, the whole world, by each person giving up, volunteering to give up, okay, if you're flying a lot because you're in the business, whatever, give up that many flights. If we all do something like that, something that is measurable, would we have a chance of making a large dent in what's going on? This is such a simple thing. We could all give up something, right, on everyone's level of income, and everyone give up something. Would that make any difference? Because when I think of that, I'm like, oh, that's very helpful.
Here.
Because it's such a simple thing, we could all do something small, but maybe it's something bigger. I don't take a vacation, I don't fly, you know what I'm saying, so.
Well, I'm a scientist, a physical scientist, not a social scientist. What you asked is really a social question. And my humble insight into that simply as a person, not as an expert in that, is we have to start to become very conscientious about everything in relation to how we use goods, energy, and respond to peer pressure of consumption. If that doesn't become part of our culture, and if we don't have the right people that do the right legislation, and that's why I think the voting is so important, that essentially forces our economic system to think about sustainability in a serious way. Sure, there are now, as we heard, companies out there that have taken a right step in the direction. Sometimes it's a little bit greenwashing or whitewashing, okay? If we don't get the financial sector and the economy part of this consciousness and really make a dent in where it counts, and in our society, economy drives money, 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 okay? Drives everything. I think we should not shy away from what you are saying, that we all can make a contribution. But I think the contribution has to be across the entire society. There are two elements. What you addressed is partly what in the science terminology is called mitigation, avoid further damage. But then there's the other part. We have already done so much damage to the atmosphere and warming built in that we also have to adapt. And that costs money. I mean, I see in New York City so many new buildings going up still on the waterfront. I wonder when the real estate sector finds out that elevation is the golden real estate of the future, not down at the waterfront. This is short-term thinking, okay? So there are all these levels of consciousness from the individual to the entire economy to real estate sector, where we have to fundamentally undergo a transformation. And if we are not, then these nightmares become reality.
Thank you. I want to thank some people. I want to thank Mark Rosen, who made this possible. I want to thank Michael Shapiro, who was the composer and did a fabulous job. Aaron Cardulo and Melissa Wieland, the animators who worked for no money and believed in this, and also officers of the Explorers Club. Will Roseman, the executive director, was really helpful. Jen O'Connor, and this lady who was
Stewart.
Wendy.
Kaplan.
Yay! You go, girl.
Thank all of
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank everybody who came tonight. Again, check out our website. We've got incredible things that will happen in the fall, but we always have something going on here. You know, tonight's talk, what Klaus said, what Carol said, you can only hear it if you come here. And I want to thank both of our guests, really. It's
You're welcome.
Very enlightening.
You're very
Thank you.
welcome. Thank you. Can we gather everyone who worked on your film and Klaus for a group picture?
Sure.